Welcome to the Sales Influence Podcast, where we talk about finding the why and how people buy. I'm your host, Victor Antonio. Thank you for lending me your ears. Oh, I love it when you join me. We're going to talk about some cool stuff today, and I think you're going to like this topic because I'm going to make you think. That's right, I'm going to make you think. Now, I started thinking about why do people, and we can use the word clients or customers in exchange for people, why do people, clients or customers, believe people like you? In other words, how is it that we wind up believing something? And I started to think about this. I mean, I gave this some really, really deep thought. Like, what is it that makes people believable or not believable? More focused on why do you believe when somebody tells you something? Why do you believe it? Why do you believe it? And it became apparent to me as I thought about different ways that we can deliver content to persuade people or influence them, that there's three large categories of influence and persuasion in terms of delivering content. Now, like, again, for my brain also, I like to kind of make things easy. I like to memorize things. So the acronym I want you to memorize for these three categories is the word ACE. A-C-E. Let's begin. And by the way, before I get into it, I got to mention this. We don't learn or we don't believe on one channel. In other words, this believability can come from three separate directions. It can come from the A direction, the C direction, and the E direction. And I'm going to highlight that right now. And then you tell me via feedback if you believe me or not. The first one, why do people believe you? The first one would be the umbrella category called authority. When a person of authority, recognized authority, says something, we tend to believe them. Now, authority, if you really analyze the word, it's really fascinating, actually. If you break out the word authority, what does that mean? Give me examples, because there's more than just one example of an authority. I could talk about an expert. An expert is somebody who's been in the business 20, 30 years. This is all they've done. They're an authority figure. We can talk about somebody with a bunch of doctorates degree, got a bunch of prizes like the Nobel Peace Prize. And these are people who have, here's the word, credentials. So credentials is one form of authority. Credentials is one form of authority. I've already mentioned the second one. Experience. Somebody who's been doing it and has a history of doing it, maybe building a business. They've been at it for 20, 30 years. They've been very successful. Warren Buffett comes to mind, right? These are people who may not have the credentials, although Warren Buffett does, but if they don't have the credentials, they at least have a track record, the experience. Third category might be a survivor. This is a good authority figure. A survivor is somebody who has gone through something, suffered the slings and arrows, but came out the other side as a survivor. They made it work. And when we hear survivor stories, you can probably think of one right now in your head. You're like, wow, look what they did, right? That gives us strength. And when that survivor says, here's what you need to do, because here's what I did in order to survive, you're more likely to believe them. How about this one? Number 4, how about a celebrity? That's an authority figure. A celebrity, let's say Michael Jordan. If Michael Jordan said, hey, Victor, I said, what, Mike? I would say, Victor, I can show you how to sink more free throws or do a fadeaway jump shot. Do you think I would listen to him if I desired to learn that? You're right, I would. I would be the first person to say, oh, well, how do you do it, Mike? Now, Mike, I can believe him because he's an authority figure, right? This is a guy who's done it, who's won championship, 6, I believe. So he is, in my opinion, a superstar celebrity. And a celebrity that within that domain, he is an expert. Pick anybody. Pick any celebrity that is an expert. If, I don't know, Al Pacino, for example, want to say, hey, Victor, want to learn how to act? Hooah! I would say, yeah, because I believe that you can teach me how to act. So keep that in mind. And also, when you're thinking about authority figures, keep in mind there might be a fifth one. These are people who have history or no history. In other words, they know the beginnings of where things came from, and they're able to really talk to you about the history of something. Teachers come to mind on this one. So we've talked about survivors, people who have credentials, people who have experience, who know history, and we talked about celebrities. So sometimes persuasion comes at you from the authority channel, right? That's one channel. Now, let's look at a second channel, the communication channel. Now, the communication channel could be another channel. Now, by the way, let me be clear here. One person can use all three channels, maybe one, two, or all three. So it's not just one or the other. But the communication channel is number two. That's the C in the acronym ACE. Sometimes how you communicate with the level of detail that you give. You ever have somebody give you such detail, you're like, whoa, he knows his stuff. Whoa, she knows her stuff. So detail, language, detail is a form of persuasion. Or how about people that can give you a vivid example? You ever have people tell a story and they give you a vivid example of what happened? You're like, whoa, that's another level of detail, but now it's in story form. Another way to communicate and persuade is through demonstration. And the more impactful you can make that demonstration, the more visceral you can make that demo, the more they're likely to believe you. Like, wow, I didn't know it could do that. How about a testimonial? There's another one, right? When you hear that somebody's used a certain product, and they tell you about it, you're like, whoa, I never thought about that. So you've used it, so that's social proof. That's another way of communicating. I love to listen to testimonials of people who've accomplished something that I want to accomplish because I want to hear how they did it. Number 5 could be comparison. This is another way of communicating. For example, if you're comparing product A versus product B, if I can show you what the differences are and I can communicate that, then I'm communicating value. I am persuading. So the 5 again are language and detail. That's number 1. Vivid example, story. Number 3, demos. Make it impactful. Make it visceral. Testimonials and comparisons. Before, after, this versus that. But now let's move on to level 3, or the third one, which is evidence, the E in the acronym ACE. Evidence. This is where statistics come in. When people show you data, right? And then maybe they give you some social proof, show you an example of what they're talking about. Kind of a little bit like storytelling, but a little different because you're showing what other people are doing and you're demonstrating. But sometimes in evidence, you present something and your intuition tells you that sounds right. That sounds right. So when you look at evidence, we look at statistics, we look at examples, we look at stories with data, we look at social proof, we look at analogies. Hey, this is how this works. It's very similar to ABC. We use analogies and stories to try to convince, but we're always using evidence of some sort, whether it's financial evidence, time evidence, credentials, so forth and so on. We use this to convince people. So now let's zoom back. 3 ways to be persuasive and influential. 1, position yourself as an authority. We know how to do that. Now, I'll give you 5 examples. Communication, the big C. Again, it's how you tell the story. You can be a person with position, but if you don't know how to communicate and tell a story, tell your story, then it may fall flat. And even if you knew how to tell a story, if you can't provide, number 3, evidence, you might fall short. So one could argue that the ultimate persuader knows how to position themselves as an authority, knows how to communicate vividly through language, through detail, through demos, through testimonials, but also can provide the evidence to make you believe them. You now have the formula. Authority, communication, evidence. That's how you persuade and influence your buyers. And that is it for the Sales Influence Podcast. On this one, I definitely want your feedback. Leave it on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, Pandora, Spotify. You can find me. Leave a comment. Love to hear back from you. Also, check out my online sales training platform, the Sales Velocity Academy. If you want to learn how to sell more faster, go to salesvelocityacademy.com. That's salesvelocityacademy.com. Lastly, I want to thank you for listening. This is Victor Antonio, always reminding you, selling ain't hard when you know how. Take care.
Hi, I'm Victor Antonio. I'm an author, sales trainer, and keynote speaker. I'm often asked, what makes a great speaker? Is it someone who delivers real content that the audience can use? Is it someone who engages the audience so they're part of the learning experience? Or is it someone who can motivate an audience to push them beyond their comfort zone and discover new abilities? The answer is yes. But the most important thing to remember is that I'm not there to look good. I'm there to make my client look good. Simply put, it's never about me, and it's always about them.